Hey guys, this is Pineapple, and today we'll be asking and hopefully answering the question of whether or not All Might from the My Hero Academia manga and anime series could be an Avenger, and how he could change the dynamic of the team if he was in the Marvel Universe. How would he fit on the team? How would he stack up against Thanos? And how could he maybe even help them reverse the snap if he was included in something like Avengers Endgame? Let's talk about it in this cool what if video, and I hope you guys don't mind me trying to get creative and including more things that I like into these videos. If not, let's get started after that intro. Hit it! So first off, All Might is a Japanese superhero who is widely acclaimed with such a high regard that the people of Japan see him as the symbol of peace, a symbol that makes villains give up on their crimes before they even commit them because he's that vigilant. With All Might, we have a high-power character that focuses on all sorts of things going on in the city, not just giant villains attacking, but even street-level things. All Might is the hero that is always sure to show up and save the day, and he's never publicly struggled in front of the population, so their hope in him and faith in him is indestructible. Even when All Might had his final battle against All for One in Season 3 of the My Hero Academia anime, All Might came through against all the odds when all of Japan was screaming his name and pushing him on. So as far as the star factor or the hero factor that one needs to be an Avenger, he's got that down. It makes me wonder if the Avengers would actually seek All Might out at some point in his heroing career if he existed in the Marvel Universe. You may be wondering why they'd call him up when the Hulk is already a member, but we'll take some time in this video a little bit later to talk about why All Might is a very fitting replacement for the Hulk on the team, or even just someone that can be on the team at the same time and still be useful. I'm thinking that if the Avengers were aware of him, or even if Nick Fury was aware of him before the events of 2012's Avengers movie, that they'd actually have gone to All Might and had him join the team very early on. In the MCU, I think they'd still get Banner though, because Banner was a necessary part of how they found the Tesseract during that movie. Even if they don't go looking for him to add him to the team, I think All Might would still somehow end up being on the team of heroes just by nature of responding to large villain attacks and being in the same place as them at some point. In Age of Ultron, we find out that it's actually rather easy to become a part of the Avengers team as long as you exhibit what it means to be a hero and you fight for what's right to keep people alive. Peter Parker had a little bit of trouble getting in, but only because Tony was worried about him in his young age and the rising dangers of the times. Realistically, if All Might were to walk into Avengers compound and just sort of ask to be an Avenger, maybe they'd be weirded out. I mean, maybe they'd be like, who the hell is this weird guy that just walked in of this bright flashy getup, but ultimately I think they'd have no problem with letting him join the team. Let's start this discussion though on what it would be like if All Might was an Avenger by first getting into how they might test him to see what he's capable of. One of the things we haven't really seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is characters training or sort of testing each other's abilities to keep each other sharp. This was actually one of the fun things about the X-Men because they do a bunch of VR training and battles against other teams of X-Men, and it'd be cool to see the Hulk and Thor doing some combat training to teach Hulk how to fight against other smarter opponents like Asgardians or Thanos, and All Might is one of those characters that, especially as a teacher, would be really fun in that space. I'm sure he'd love to try and push Captain America to his limits, and honestly, Captain America is the kind of person that All Might would see as a possible successor for One for All if only he was younger. There's another member on the Avengers team that I think All Might ultimately would give his quirk to if he had the choice, and that probably would have to be Spider-Man, but either way, that's kind of neither here nor there. All Might fits the same role as the Hulk does on the team because of his physical abilities, and that's actually a really interesting thing to touch on real quick. Depending on how directly they would adapt All Might's abilities in a world like the MCU, his powers could just be absolutely goofy. I mean, All Might can jump incredible distances and cause bursts in the air of his muscles that can push him in directions to simulate a sort of flying. Besides that, he has monster speed and strength, and according to him, he has to keep his strength and power low because if not, he would create whirlwinds just walking through the city. This is obviously running on anime physics, but All Might has done all sorts of wild stuff like punch and change the weather or leveling a large section of the training city after he was weakened and had special weights on to make it even harder for him to move. If they adapt him one-to-one from page to screen in this what-if situation, then he'd be even stronger than the Hulk is in the movies while also having full control of his mind. This doesn't mean that he's an outright better replacement for the Hulk though, because All Might comes with his own complications. First off, once Banner turns into the Hulk, getting him angrier is only going to power him up more and more. Technically, he has an unlimited amount of strength that he can gather, and he has the potential to outdo literally anything that All Might can do, but the issue is that we haven't really seen him get to that point in the MCU. We've seen the Hulk furious, but it just seems like he's significantly nerfed compared to his mountain-lifting comic book counterpart, but he still gets the job done and is ready for the long haul. With All Might, we know that he's actually suffering from a grave injury thanks to a battle against All for One before the beginning of the My Hero series. Because of this, he has a limited time every day that he can spend as a hero in his muscle form, and this means that there are all sorts of occasions and situations where All might fall out of his hero form right in the middle of a battle or war against some sort of enemy. This makes All Might significantly more killable than the Hulk without even taking into consideration that All Might doesn't have a healing factor. Could the Avengers help All Might though? I suppose if All Might was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he'd be able to depend on Tony Stark and the various other superheroes and scientists in the movies to help him with his stomach injury. Surely Tony would be able to come up with something to make it so that All Might could extend the use of his powers or even maybe fix his injury altogether. If that's the case and the Avengers were able to somehow get All Might back in his prime with the help of Tony's tech or even some Wakandan tech, that'd be something amazing for his character, and it would help him go on to solve all of his own problems back in Japan. So that's how the Avengers could help All Might, but how could he help them by joining their team? Well, let's take a look at how All Might's presence would have changed the events of some classic Marvel and Avengers movies, while also discussing how he'd potentially get along with various characters at various different times. Let's say All Might was added to the Avengers team as a member of the original 6 and got help from Tony and the others to fix his injuries, allowing him to operate as a hero full-time in America and ultimately defeat All for One back home before he met Deku and transferred his quirk. First, All Might would actually probably get along with a good number of the original team of Avengers. I think him and Captain America would get along just fine. He'd have a sort of funny relationship with Black Widow and Hawkeye. Him and Thor would probably get along really well actually, but I think he would take issue with the way that Tony Stark does things at times, like many of the other characters do in these movies. This, I think, introduces a weird vibe to the group because it's like having a Thor-powered Captain America who isn't on your side and can actually stop you regardless of your suits of armor. Ultimately, I think All Might would try to stop the Hulk's freakout in the SHIELD helicarrier, and this might cause the both of them to fall off a bit, not just Hulk. I think this presents an interesting situation because after Hulk falls off of the helicarrier, we don't see Banner again until it's time for the Hulk to power up in the center of New York when the Chitauri are flooding the city. In this alternate story, there's potential for All Might and Bruce Banner to actually sort of form a friendship solely based on the fact that they can kind of relate to each other in a really weird way. Sure, Bruce turns into the Hulk and he takes on a sort of alternate persona when he isn't in full control, but he still transforms into a form that gives him all sorts of strengths and benefits. All Might is very much the same here by being able to turn into his muscle form, but at the root of the two biggest members of the Avengers team are two skinny, scrawny men. So it's kind of some common ground for the two of them that would set up a good friendship between All Might and Banner, and would also lend more towards Banner, Stark, or anyone else helping All Might with his injuries. All Might would surely check in with the rest of the team, and at some point he would show up alongside Banner, and it would be absolutely amazing. Like Iron Man was having trouble destroying all of the Chitauri that were coming through the portal, so it was nice to have Hulk just jumping between skyscrapers and destroying the small gliding Chitauri, and even destroying some ships. If All Might was there, it'd be like having two Hulks on the battlefield, one taking control of the ground and the other taking to the sky. I think All Might would be jumping between the ships and flying straight through them like a bullet and just absolutely destroying them before landing into waves of more enemies and just taking them all out like a beast. The most important thing for the Avengers would be to make sure that Loki and his scepter were kept far away from All Might, because if he was brainwashed, they'd have another huge problem to deal with, and Thanos' army will have gotten that much stronger. In Age of Ultron, once again, I think we'd see All Might sticking with the team and enjoying the success of the Avengers, but he'd also start looking for a young hero to train, knowing that the responsibility of passing down the power of One for All still falls on him. At the same time, Tony and Banner would create Ultron, and upon learning this, I think All Might would be genuinely upset at Banner, thinking that they were more alike. Tony's plan of covering the planet in a suit of armor is a nice plan on paper, but a cold defensive plan like that isn't heroic enough to truly change people and create peace. All Might would think that this is too cold, and the true path to peace involves leading the way yourself and standing up for what's right, not just creating some robot with no emotions to do it for you, unable to inspire anyone. Once again, we're presented with the interesting opportunity to have a villain play with All Might's mind, and I honestly think that the Scarlet Witch would try to use All Might instead of the Hulk to cause outrage by having him destroy the city. Having the Hulk, a figure that some people are already afraid of, destroying a portion of a city is damaging to the Avengers and ultimately is part of what leads into the Superhero Registration Act, also known as the Sokovia Accords in the movies. But how much worse would it be if the one destroying the town and killing innocents was Japan's #1 hero and the symbol of peace, All Might? It makes me wonder if Iron Man would be smart enough to create an All Might Buster armor, which honestly wouldn't be that hard to do with them knowing about All Might's weaknesses and probably how to undo whatever they've done to heal him. But for an Iron Man suit to have a fair fight, it'd have to be an amazing suit of armor, and I'd totally love to see that. While All Might is wildly powerful, no matter how we scale him here, I still don't want him to be able to break vibranium with his hands or anything like that. Maybe at 100% output you'd see him be able to break something like Captain America's shield in the story that I'm telling, but that's strictly so that All Might doesn't immediately make short work of Ultron here. I think All Might would call in the help of some of his fellow Japanese heroes like Endeavor, Edgeshot, and Cementos, but even with their help, ultimately, I don't see how All Might could lessen the weight of Sokovia falling and change what ultimately happened. Now see, where things get interesting is Captain America Civil War. You see, you'd instantly think that All Might would be on Cap's side from how I've been telling this what if so far, but when I really think about it, even though All Might has his issues with Tony Stark, he's still the kind of person that would see that at the core of Tony's heart is an arc reactor, but is also the soul of a hero. Tony may mess up and he may screw things up and put everyone in danger, but the things that he does are in pursuit of a better tomorrow, and so with that notion in mind, and with the experience of already coming from a society where heroes need to be licensed and documented and basically government regulated, I see All Might as being on Iron Man's side. This is really unfortunate because I could see All Might seeing Captain America like a younger brother of sorts, or even as an older son. They have a lot in common and they embody a lot of the same principles, and in general, I'm sure you could just imagine All Might and Captain America bonding over a conversation about Ovaltine and justice, but here they would be in exact opposition. All Might would feel the shame of his actions in Sokovia with the Scarlet Witch taking over his mind, and instead of giving up on being a hero and being shamed or anything like that, All Might stands tall and decides to be the symbol of the Sokovia Accords. He would probably be in commercials and all sorts of things telling people to sign up because that's what he thinks is right. By the time the airport scene comes along, I think for the sake of the story that they would have All Might sort of out of the fight, or at least nearing the limits of his muscle form for the day. Really, just because Team Iron Man having the Vision, Spider-Man, and All Might seems really unfair, especially consider the fact that Team Cap could have potentially had Thor and Hulk to balance them out. All Might would ultimately find himself still working as a hero after the events of Civil War because he'd still be a hero who signed the Accords and was working under the rules. That is, until Thanos attacks. When Cull Obsidian and the Ebony Maw attack New York City, All Might would be right there, and honestly, this is great because we didn't get to see a big bulky battle here in the city in Infinity War because Bruce was unable to turn into the Hulk. I think having All Might versus Cull Obsidian happening right at the beginning of the movie practically would be really hype, especially if it captured some of the crazy action from the All Might versus Nomu fight from season 1, with All Might just hitting Cull with an insane punch that sends him crashing into one of those big cyclone ships that the Black Order arrived to Earth on. With Cull Obsidian defeated early on, I still think that the Ebony Maw would capture Doctor Strange while also being able to subdue Iron Man long enough to get back to the ship. I think All Might, Iron Man, and Spider-Man would make it aboard the ship on its way to Titan, and the only difference to what I think would go on in the ship is that I think the altercation with Ebony Maw would happen much quicker, with All Might trying to give Ebony Maw a huge bear hug, leading to Spider-Man and Iron Man shooting him out of the pod like in Alien. It's too bad that All Might isn't Team Cap in this story, because it'd also be cool to have All Might be part of the secret Avengers team that Cap had going on for a while, and it'd be smart for All Might to be in Wakanda guarding Vision from the villains, because like Thor, he'd be one of their strongest assets. Additionally, the Battle of Wakanda happens in a large open field and in a forest, so I think this would give All Might space to really use the full scope of his powers and go all out to wipe away the Black Order troops and push them back alongside with the other Avengers. On Titan, I can see the battle with Thanos going largely the same way, but even with All Might's help, there's still only one way to truly defeat Thanos. You have to give him the stones and allow things to play out further. And knowing that, Doctor Strange would eventually hand the stone over after their unsuccessful battle. Thanos already pretty much has all the stones, including the Power and Reality Stones on Titan, so as strong as All Might is and as much damage as he could potentially do to Thanos with something like the United States of Smash, Thanos recognizing this danger and also probably having information on who All Might is already, like he did on Stark, would probably just turn All Might into ribbons or a wall of bricks like he did with the Guardians. On Earth, alternatively, I still think All Might wouldn't be much help in defending Vision once Thanos arrives for the Mind Stone, but that all leads up to the events of Avengers Endgame. We still don't know the exact specifics behind the plan in Avengers Endgame, since Marvel has been super hush-hush on anything having to do with the film, but what we do know is that the Avengers have suffered a loss at the hands of Thanos. Half of all living things in the universe were snapped out of existence, and I feel like All Might lives here just off of being one of the original Avengers in the story, just like the rest of the OG Avengers lived in the real Marvel universe. But this snap would kill off some of the people in his life, like Gran Torino and other major heroes in Japan. Our characters are going off on a journey to somehow reverse the snap and take on Thanos for one last battle. From the trailers, we can tell that there's some sort of time skip between the events of the snap and Endgame, and I think that All Might would go back to Japan to restabilize the hero community after they've probably lost a good number of heroes. Hawkeye would probably travel there with him and probably take on the vigilante persona of Ronin, and All Might would then go on to meet Deku and get ready to pass on his power to the next generation of hero. But then, the call would come in. It's time. We found a way. Without going too deep into what's going to be going on in Avengers Endgame, I think All Might would be a very welcome asset to the team in their mission to stop Thanos from preventing the Avengers from reversing the snap and getting back their friends. He is going to be extremely driven, and he's still one of the most powerful members of the on-screen group here, even more now that members of the group have been snapped. I'm sure All Might in space would be just something to behold, but I see All Might giving literally every drop of energy he has fighting Thanos and helping his friends. I can see All Might going for it and maybe even dying in the fight against Thanos before they ultimately reverse the snap, and this is sad because it ends the sequence of One for All being passed on and basically prevents Deku's entire story from happening, but it also fits well because All Might would be going out here in a way that I'm sure allows the heroes to ultimately save the day and snuff out the greatest evil that literally any of them has ever faced. So for All Might, what do I think would happen if he were an Avenger? I think All Might would be a great member and an asset to the team who would initially lean more towards Captain America's side, but would ultimately find himself on Team Iron Man. He'd see potential in heroes like Spider-Man and the Guardians, and he'd be a big help in each of the Avengers crossover movies if he was there and could be involved. Ultimately, he'd be a really funny member of the team, kind of playing a weird Drax and Thor type of role, while also having a really dark and serious backstory to deal with, which would be great to explore on screen, amongst the other heroes that we've come to know and love over the last decade in the MCU. I think All Might would give his all in the battle against Thanos, only to fail and have to return to Japan to hold it up on his shoulders as the symbol of peace to a broken society, only to then again return to the Avengers once the opportunity to set it all right presents itself. I think All Might would do literally anything, even give his life, to set the world back to one where people can smile and half of the universe isn't dead, and at the end of the day, I can see All Might dying to help the snap get reversed, leaving behind the legacy of one of the greatest heroes ever. Do you think that All Might could be an Avenger, and how useful do you think he would be if he were let on the team? Do you also think that he could do more in Avengers Endgame? Let me know, and please be careful of spoilers because the movie is right around the corner and the internet is a wild place. Do you like this what if story of All Might living and dying as a hero in the Marvel Universe, or do you think it'd go a completely different way? Tell me in the comment section below, and like the video if you want to see me do more videos like this in the future. I'm gonna go work on another video because I've got a big list of them that I'm working on, so peace out everyone, I love you all, this is Pineapple.